Amid the turmoil of World War II, the United States government takes a drastic step that will forever alter the lives of thousands. On March 18, 1942, the U.S. creates the War Relocation Authority. After the attack on Pearl Harbor in December 1941, the U.S. fears a Japanese invasion of the West Coast. With some believing Japanese Americans might aid the enemy in the event of an invasion, they become the target of anger and resentment. The Treasury Department freezes the assets of both citizens and resident aliens born in Japan. And the Justice Department arrests about 1,500 religious and community leaders identified as potentially subversive. In February, President Franklin Roosevelt signs Executive Order 9066, authorizing the removal of Japanese Americans from the West Coast. The War Relocation Authority is created to carry out that order. Without due process, 120,000 Japanese Americans are moved to 10 inland internment camps. 2/3 of the relocated are natural-born U.S. citizens. No Japanese American is ever convicted of any serious act of espionage or sabotage during the war. I'm here in Orange County, California, which as it turns out is quite appropriate for today's video. Why am I here? Well, there's a big family birthday that's going on, and if you watched yesterday's video, you'd already know about that birthday. Anyway, so what am I going to talk about coming up? Well, first of all, I want to answer some questions about Japanese internment, like what were the camps like? Did anyone die in the camps? How long did all of this last? Also, what about Japanese Americans in Hawaii? Are they part of this relocation or not? And finally, has the government ever apologized for Japanese internment? So we'll get to those questions, but don't forget to check out Today in History in my Teachers Pay Teachers store. There's a link in the description. All right, so once relocation is announced, Japanese Americans in the exclusion zone along the West Coast are given little time to set their lives in order, gather what belongings they can carry, and report to the authorities. Assembly areas are at places like racetracks, where some temporarily stay in what had actually been horse stalls. The 10 more permanent camps are established in California, Arizona, Utah, Idaho, Wyoming, Colorado, and Arkansas. Japanese Americans in Hawaii, however, are not part of this mass relocation. It's simply impractical. At the time, about 1/3 of Hawaii's population is of Japanese ancestry. That's over 150,000 people. With World War II raging, ships and personnel cannot be spared for such an effort. Also, removing 1/3 of the population would be disastrous economically and socially for the islands. However, about 2,000 high-priority individuals in Hawaii are relocated, with little due process, I might add. Living conditions in the camps are Spartan. Internees live in uninsulated barracks, furnished only with cots and coal-burning stoves. The 20-foot by 25-foot rooms offer little privacy, with just a curtain separating one family from another. Residents use common bathroom and laundry facilities with limited hot water. Some camps, like the ones in the Arizona desert, are dusty and blisteringly hot in the summer. Others, like the Heart Mountain, Wyoming camp, are miserably cold in the winter. However, these resilient people live as normally as possible under these challenging circumstances. The children attend schools in the camps, and there are social events as well. Couples fall in love and even marry. Children are born. They are fed 3 meals a day and even grow some of that food. The internees are allowed to set up a type of government within the camps that includes electing camp leaders. Fear of the unknown is a huge issue for the detainees. Some fear the worst, thinking that, if the United States government is willing to put them into these camps, what else might it do to them? Rumors, although unfounded, spread through the camps that they could be exchanged for American prisoners of war and thus forced to go to Japan. This, of course, does not happen, but the internees live with a lack of certainty about their future. So do any Japanese Americans die in the camps? Well, camp hospital facilities record 5,981 births and 1,862 deaths during the period of internment. At least 100 of those deaths are from tuberculosis. A few are also killed during confrontations with guards or while attempting to escape. In January 1943, the U.S. Army restores the right of Japanese Americans to volunteer for military service. A year later, the government determines that young U.S.-born Japanese Americans are loyal enough for compulsory military service, making them eligible for the draft. 33,000 young men of Japanese ancestry serve while their families are confined in the relocation camps. Some volunteer, while others are drafted. Like African Americans, they serve in segregated units. So, why do they serve? Well, many desire to prove their family's loyalty and also bring honor to their families. The 442nd Regimental Combat Team, a Japanese American unit, fights in some of the bloodiest battles in the European theater. Based on the size and length of service, it becomes the most decorated unit in U.S. military history. 21 of them earned the Medal of Honor, the nation's highest military distinction. Daniel Inouye, who goes on to serve nearly 50 years in the U.S. Senate, is one of those Medal of Honor recipients. In December 1944, a proclamation is issued lifting the West Coast exclusion orders and restoring the right of Japanese Americans to return to their former communities. It goes into effect on January 2, 1945. In September 1945, after the Japanese surrender, all restrictions against Japanese Americans are revoked. The last of the 10 camps officially closes in March 1946. The War Relocation Authority is officially disbanded in June 1946. For some Japanese Americans, adjusting to life after the war is challenging. Psychological scars run deep. Financially, many must start over. Some even have had property that has been taken over by squatters and face legal battles to remove them. In 1988, more than 40 years after the end of World War II, President Ronald Reagan signs the Civil Liberties Act. In it, he formally apologizes on behalf of the U.S. government for Japanese internment. The act pays each surviving internee $20,000 in compensation. This episode is one of the greatest civil rights failures in United States history. It shows how wartime hysteria can lead to disastrous consequences. Also, it is certainly a stain on the legacy of President Franklin Roosevelt, one of America's most highly regarded presidents, who truly fails these vulnerable Americans. Well, if you like what you've seen here today, please be sure to like and subscribe, and know that there's another great Mr. Lewis video here, and another one that you can watch right here. Thanks for watching.